All right, guys, so today we're starting our series on Sabbath. Today's going to be actually a two-part introduction to the practice of Sabbath, and that's just, we have a lot to cover this week. I'm really excited about just hearing from a lot of our young adults who've already put this into practice, so you get some testimonies on what this looks like again, and it's going to be a fun one for sure. First, right off the bat, I do want to say kind of just a couple things. And the first and foremost, just kind of by citing John Mark Comer, the work they've done over at Bridgetown, particularly at practicingtheway.org, which we'll link in the description here. They just got some great resources that just dive much deeper into this practice of Sabbath and how you can incorporate it into your lives. Would definitely encourage you to check those out, and just really need to give a big thanks to all the work that they've done over there, because it has been integral in particularly in my journey. I know as I've walked through incorporating Sabbath into a practice in my life. And I feel like a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today, and probably again as I do another one of these videos, is almost going to be just some paraphrasing of the work that he's done, and just some ways that I've been able to internalize it in my own life. But just incredibly grateful for all of those resources, and just want to commend them to you. Second is just to let you know, by way of confession, that this has been a really challenging process for us. Kind of introduced this idea about a year ago when we went from one kid to three kids, and was still in seminary at the time, and just really feeling the need to do this, but it was struggling so much. And even today, it's just so often we feel like we're taking a few steps forward and then a couple steps back as we try to incorporate the practice of Sabbath. And I just wanted to be just honest about that, because you, as you hopefully incorporate this into your regular routine, if you find yourself challenged or discouraged, just know that you are not alone. That ceasing from work and actually practicing rest is a lot more challenging than it sounds, and it takes a lot of effort and practice and work in order to rest. And so don't be discouraged by that. And second of all, just to let you know, just right off the bat, that this is by no way a legalistic demand that we are trying to place on you as we talk about the Sabbath. It can be a fairly controversial topic, and so by no means are we trying to make this a matter of law. But just really an invitation for you to join us in pursuing rest in Jesus. And all of these practices are really, that is going to be at the heart of what we're talking about, not these legalistic demands of things you must do in order to be a Christian, but just as Christians in relation with God, how can you continue to pursue Him? So Sabbath is no different. And just in a quick word about some of the controversies, I think it's important to just mention this. In no way are we attempting to answer the centuries of controversy over the issue of Sabbath, or to belittle them or oversimplify those important conversations that are happening. But I do want to say, for the purpose of what we're trying to achieve in these videos over this week, the question of, is this required? Should Christians, should they not do this? In those terms, that is probably the wrong way to pose the question, or just the wrong question in general. To that, I would say, cards on the table for me, I would say no, it is not required. Certainly, being saved by grace alone, through faith alone, in Christ alone, and not by keeping the Sabbath. That is a part of our theology. So I would answer that no. But really the important question, or the right question that I would hope that we're asking, is not, is Sabbath required, but is it helpful? Is this going to be a helpful practice in our lives, in patterning our lives around after Jesus, patterning our lives after Jesus, and becoming more like Him as we participate with the Spirit in the work that He is doing in us. So that's the question that we're aiming to answer, and to that I would say a resounding yes. This is in the ways that I've begun to incorporate, I found this to be a helpful practice, and I'm confident that it will be for you as well. And just to kind of finish up part one, I want to share with you one of my favorite just verses about the Sabbath. and I just think a really helpful word for us as we think about incorporating this into our lives was in Mark 2 and verse 27. So this is kind of when he's stirring up a lot of controversy around this time with the Pharisees, doing a lot of his mercy ministry, acts of healing or miracles of healing, and he's doing he's kind of gleaning from the grain fields with his disciples, and doing a lot of these things on the Sabbath that the Pharisees are getting upset about. They consider to be work, and they accuse him of profaning the Sabbath. And so he's kind of answering their accusations, and he says this wonderful line in Mark 2:27 again. It's the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Sabbath was made for man. Man was not made for the Sabbath. This is the way that Jesus is answering these Pharisees and their concern. And for them, the main thing that they're going to need to hear during that time, because of the kind of the way they viewed the Sabbath, was that second part. This idea that that man was not made for the Sabbath. The Sabbath, it's not about the Sabbath. It's not meant to be this this burden of religious ritual that God is placing on you in order to force you into some sort of holy mode that he's trying to impose on you against your will. This is it's not meant to be a burden, but actually it's meant to be a gift. And so I think for us, 2,000 years later, we've gotten that. But for us, what we probably need to hear is actually that first part, which is the Sabbath was made for man. This is a gift of God's grace, a pattern that he's given us from creation of work for 6 days and rest for one. It's a pattern that God has given us for us to cease from our striving and the toil that we experience on this side of Eden, that he's given us this beautiful, wonderful grace gift of rest, and Jesus is inviting us into that in order to experience all that God has for us in his easy yoke. And so that's going to be at the heart of what the Sabbath practice is, and I just think that's a great encouragement for us to start.